Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast-to-Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, along with my co-host, Ed Carbajal, and on a weekly basis, we plan to bring you the biggest news and interviews in the world of combat sports. Ed, we're lucky to be joined this week by undefeated LFA fighter Natan Levy, getting ready for his LFA 69 bout with Frank Meno, another undefeated fighter. Natan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
So I saw you had announced the fight on your own social media, Natan, and you had called it the biggest challenge you've ever faced. Is it because he's undefeated like you, or is it because something you know about his style?
First of all, he's undefeated in 3 professional bouts like I am.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I couldn't get much video on him, not enough to make, a complex game plan. But I could definitely tell you physically is the strongest I fought, without a doubt. I could see him, get out of submissions with pure strength and a few punches on top and finishing guys. So it's definitely not an opponent I want to get hit by.
This will be your 4th bout for LFA. How did they come about signing you? What were you in Vegas when they came around, or how did you get involved with Legacy Fighting?
I finished my amateur career with 4-0, and it only made sense to sign with a big, professional league. Most of 3 out of my 4 amateur fights were finishes, 2 in the first minute of the fight. So, my coach got in contact with them, and we got the deal done.
What
is
what,
the?
Go ahead, Ed. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. The Ron Crook that called your. It's funny that you said there's not a lot of video on him, because I found a lot of video on you. So I'm hoping that's not a problem in preparing for the fight, because I mean, Lord knows if he found enough video on you. But one of the things I saw in the highlights, I think it was LFA 58. Ron Crook said that the UFC already had their eye on you. Had you heard anything like that?
We spoke about doing contender series a while back, but we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. Right now, I'm just focused on winning this next fight.
It looked like all of your fights had taken place in the United States. What's your status as far as being a resident of Israel? Or have you been in the States for a while, or how does that work?
So at first I used to come in with my tourist visa, just for a few months at a time. Had to leave every 3 months. So I would spend half a year in Israel and come back to the Vegas for 3 months just to train and hopefully get an amateur fight. Because of that issue, it took me a couple of years to get an amateur fight, because when one would get canceled, I would immediately have to fly back home. I didn't have time to wait another month. And a year and a half ago, I got a visa. It's called P1. It's for performers, for athletes, and I've been living here since. And I can fight pro this way.
So, talking about your where you're coming from and stuff, only because I noticed it in I forget which event it was. I don't think it was 58. It might have been the other event. But you had a T-shirt on that that you put on. I know you hold up the flag when you win and stuff and take the picture with your team. But you had a T-shirt that said Jiu-Jitsu, Jew Jitsu, is But you also, your profile says you have a background in karate and kung fu. So how did you mix all your training disciplines together?
Yeah, so my background is karate. I grew up doing kung fu, and we transitioned to karate. I got my black belt in Japan when I was 18.
Oh wow!
Yeah, before my first fight, I was already 3rd degree black belt at 21 and maybe 22. But immediately when I came to Vegas, it was the first time I ever did grappling, and I fell in love with jiu-jitsu. I knew it was where I was lacking the most as well. I did need to do a lot of adjustments in the striking, but I had 0 ground. So started doing jiu-jitsu twice a day, every day, on top of boxing and MMA and everything I was doing. And a lot of people would come up to me and say, "Hey, jiu-jitsu," so it kind of stuck. And like I said, 5 out of my 7 wins are by submission, so
Yeah.
makes sense.
I saw that, and I find that odd because as somebody that I did the same thing. I started with karate and got into jujitsu later. I'm also probably like 20 years older than you, but it seems like you obviously you just said you train twice a day when you fell in love with it, and most of your wins come by submission. So how did you how I just wonder how you transition into the art so deep so fast. I mean, I guess it had something to do with consistency. Twice a day is pretty hard. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's hard, especially because I used to come for 3 months at a time. Like I
Yeah.
said, I felt like I was there was a time limit, and I could only train for a few months at a time. And then when I had to go home, I'd have to work, because I didn't work in the U.S. obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So it was my time to just train, go full at it. And we would do my boxing, MMA, strength conditioning, but no matter what the schedule for the day was, I would still do 2 more sessions of jiu-jitsu, one in the morning, one in the evening.
Has all your time been at Syndicate MMA in Las Vegas?
Correct. I've also trained, I trained before Syndicate. I went to and trained with Jimmy Giff, which is my striking coach to this day. And I go do jiu-jitsu at 10 Planet nowadays.
Oh, wow, that's good for MMA because of the no gi. Does it seem like just because of your string of submission wins, people already default you as a jiu-jitsu guy, and the karate and the striking take them as by surprise?
I don't think I take anybody by surprise anymore. But at first, people did want to take me down, and then they would do it, so desperately that the choke would just be there or the submission would just be there. And at some point, when people stopped wanting to grapple with me, I got to show a little bit what I can do on my feet.
I've always kind of been interested, especially being an old school fighter, kind of with international fighters and how they got into the world of fighting. In Israel, were you obviously there's the Krav Maga is kind of a national art, I guess you would say. It's kind of more survival. How was mixed martial arts? How was the world in Israel? Was it something that was around, something that you could see, or was it something you had to seek out as you got older?
Yeah, so in Israel, I would do karate only. When I started out, when I was like 12, 13, I was watching Pride fights, UFC. I was waiting for the Crow Cup featherweight fight, stuff like that. Back in the day, I was just a kid. But when I looked to train in MMA online, I couldn't find anywhere. That's why I went. I also wanted to learn Kung Fu and karate. For me, it was all just martial arts. So I did go and learn karate. But at first, I seeked out to train in MMA, and I just couldn't. There was no place to, not that I knew of anyway. And, nowadays, the sport has evolved in Israel. When I'm in Israel now, I can train MMA with Roy Pariente. He's my trainer in Israel. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. There are a lot of black belts now in Israel, and in jiu-jitsu tournaments, you can see, we get medals in worlds and Europeans and everything. So the level has been flying in the last years.
One of the original Israeli fighter that I remember, and I don't know if you're familiar with him, I'm sure you probably are, is a guy named Moti Hornstein, who fought in. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I assume he's a big name out there. Ed, if you're not familiar, he debuted at UFC 10, fought Martin. Unfortunately, was debuted against Mark Coleman, and then they decided to bring him back, I think, at UFC 14 and give him Mark Kerr. So he's one of those guys that had a tough start.
Luck wasn't on his side.
Yeah.
No, but I saw him compete in an event called the Shidokan. It was a Shidokan event where it kind of wrapped up everything where you train, where the first round was actually kickboxing with gloves for 3 minutes, and then the second round was gi grappling, and then the third round was karate, bare knuckle karate without strikes to the face. So it was actually and it was an 8-man tournament, and that's why I saw him win that, probably in about 98, 99. But It's I just wondered. He's the name that pops into my head when I think of old school Israeli MMA, and we've talked to the Cutman for Bellator because they have events in Israel, and he says now those events are some of the most exciting events that he's ever been a part of. He says them and Dublin, Ireland, are the two places where the events have popped off and just been out of control great times. So. Have you, I know your focus is UFC, but if Bellator came knocking with a contract to fight in Israel, would that be something that would interest you?
No, I already got offered a few times and I declined.
Oh, there it is.
Respectfully.
Yeah. So I mean, just because Matt mentioned old school karate, and you said you got your black belt from Japan. What style of karate is it?
It's a Wei-Chiryu. It's an Okinawan style.
Oh, nice.
And I went and trained there, the birthplace of karate. I trained there for a few months when I got my black belt and beforehand. Last year I went back to Japan, but this time to train Kyokushin in Tokyo, and hopefully I'll be back there soon.
Oh, nice. I mean, that's one thing about in training in traditional karate. I feel like that's something that seems to be not present in as far as guys training in newer guys training in MMA, the body conditioning that comes from karate. Is that something that you've noticed in your experience training, in different styles?
Yeah, definitely. I think not being scared of getting hit is a big part of it. At the same time, I've been working a lot of point fighting in Las Vegas with a teacher called Hiroshi Allen. He trains, teenagers who are going to be in the Olympics in 2020, and as well as strong body conditioning, which is one side. The other side is the point fighting of hitting and not getting hit, which is also super important.
Yeah.
Do you have any? Are there any UFC or high level pros that are your weight at Syndicate that you train with daily? What are some of the guys that are around your weight class?
Around my weight class, we have Brendan Jenkins from LFA.
Okay.
Sherrod Blackledge, Jordan Levitt, a lot of guys were all coming up. The three of us that I just said are 3-0 right now. So we're a lot of prospects all growing together. We got some UFC fighters, but none from my weight.
How do you handle the weight? Is it a rough cut for you? I mean, you fight at featherweight. What do you walk around at when you're not in camp?
I get as high as like 175.
That's pretty rough.
Pretty rough, but I'm getting better and better at it. Before, for my second pro fight, it was the hardest cut ever because I took a nutritionist and I trusted him in 100% and listened to everything he said. And when he told me not to worry and to trust the process, so I did. But eventually I had to cut 15 pounds of water. Wow. So it was very hard. And in this last camp, I've been working with perfecting athletes. And it was the easiest weight cut I ever had. I was on weight the night before and just felt great. So I'm going to be with them again.
How far out do you start cutting weight?
Like 4 to 6 weeks. Depends how high I get.
So what are you at right now?
Right now, like 169.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not too. I mean, you still have time. What was the name of the people you said you use again?
Perfecting Athletes.
Perfecting Athletes.
Yeah, I highly recommend them.
Cool. Do you know if they have a website or anything that we could look at stuff?
Yeah, I think they have. They have like an Instagram, and I'm pretty sure they have a website.
Oh, cool. I'll look into them. Thank you.
So, are you a fan of the sport? I mean, obviously you compete in it, but are you someone who sits around on the weekends and watches fights, or do you do other things?
I am a fan, but the more I become a fighter, the less of a fan I am. Like, if when I was a kid, I knew that UFC 100 was gonna have Frank and Brock and GSP and whoever. Now I'm like, I'm not sure what's the next event. If a friend calls me over, invites me, I'll go and watch it and have fun. But I don't know like who's fighting. I know that Rose is fighting this weekend, but other than that, I have no clue.
Mm. So, I mean, you talked about not being able to find much video on your opponent. Is that something you do? I know there's some fighters that say they don't like to look at tape on their opponents. You know, they just like to be ready for whoever. What's your attitude when taking on a fight?
No, I don't like to be ready for whoever.
Mm.
If I need to, I'll be ready. You know, my amateur fights, there wasn't much footage of my opponent, so you just go in there and kind of swing it.
Mm.
But if I can sit down and watch their every move, watch their tendencies, their habits, it makes the fight a lot easier. Like when me and my coach break down the fights and he tells me what he wants me to do, and I go out there and do exactly what we said, it feels like way more effective.
So what do you know about Meno as far as, I mean, I know you said you couldn't find any video. Did you look at his record and like see how he likes to win? Is he a grinder or a wrestler? Like, what do you know about him?
Yeah, he's a grinder, I think. Again, I could only see like a few clips of few seconds, but I can see he's throwing bombs. He's kind of a headhunter, I guess. Good wrestling, solid wrestling. And I know like what have been my faults in my last fight, and I know what he's gonna look to take advantage of, and I'm working on those holes, you know.
So will this be your first main card fight for LFA?
No, the second one.
The second one. Okay.
Yeah, he opened the main card on the last one, right? You were the first fight on the main card.
Yeah, correct. In Albuquerque.
Do you know your card placement on this one? Are you a few more fights up, or have they told you that yet?
I think more. Since they streamed the first fight on Facebook, I'd rather be at that fight, so people in Israel can watch it because we don't have access TV. So if I can be the first fight on the main card, they would be able to watch me online, which would be great.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that they streamed. So they streamed the first fight of the main card on Facebook?
Yeah, I think so. Oh. That's what happened last time.
So let me ask you, you said something interesting just a little bit ago. You mentioned your last fight. You won by decision. Are you critical when you don't get the finish of yourself?
I'm always critical, even when I get the finish. You know, even my second pro fight, I got a guillotine in like 29 seconds, I think it was.
Yeah.
And even then, looking at the footage, you know, me and my coach sat down and he said, you know, you still have what to learn from it. And we were both bummed out by the fact that he did take me down. I was like, he was talking shit for a month, saying he was going to take me down.
Wow.
And like, I choked him, but he did take me down. So props to him.
Yeah.
You mentioned growing up, you watching the Pride fights, and obviously you'd mentioned that you respectfully declined Bellator's contract options, and obviously the UFC is the target goal. It sounds like. You mentioned also going to Japan and getting your black belt there. Have you ever been contacted by Ryzen?
Nope.
Would that be something that might interest you, or is UFC your focus?
I think it would be cool to fight for One or for Ryzen. I would love to fight in Asia.
Yeah, I mean it's a totally different experience.
At some point, you know.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you know, another couple wins here, or at least one more. You're looking at the Contender Series, is what it sounds like. So, I mean, you got if the UFC comes knocking, you don't turn that down. But obviously, obviously, Japan would be fun. Go ahead, Ed.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, I think aren't they very last minute when they let you know? I know they like to announce like the initial Contender Series, but they're doing it different this year. I think they're doing some on ESPN Plus, or is it strictly on ESPN Plus? I forget how they're doing it, but like you could still get called any minute after your fight in June. You know, it goes throughout the summer, so you're after June 7th, you'd be available if you know, hope God willing you finish the fight and walk away injury free.
Yeah, that would work out. I sure hope so.
What's your contract situation with LFA? Are their contracts basically open where if the UFC comes calling, you can go no matter what your situation is, or are you locked in with fights with them?
Right now we're signing per fight.
That makes sense. That's smart.
Yeah, I mean they sign a lot of guys from there. I mean, I usually off the top of my head I know where a lot of the contender guys that came from there, but I don't know why I can't think of any now. Probably because I took medication before this. But but so the Matt had mentioned that you had done some jujitsu mission only things, or you were in the world and stuff. Well, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, did you say you were a black belt in jujitsu too, or
No,
what
no,
level
I'm
are
a
you?
blue belt. I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, so you're competing in I mean you're racking up submission. You don't seem like it from what the footage I saw. I would say like purple brown from what I saw, but you're a competitor. There's always difference. There's differences
Yeah,
between the
exactly. There's
yeah,
a
yeah.
difference.
So you won the Gracie what was it, the Gracie Open and the Gracie Worlds last year?
Yeah,
Is that right?
the nationals in the open weight and the and Gracie Worlds in my weight. Like my weight was 175 at that point.
What's the biggest guy you had to go up against at open weight?
Like 220, I think. Big guy.
Wow. And that was at blue belt?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. That's
Yeah.
that explains why you're subbing 145ers if
Yeah.
taking out the bigger guys. What do you see yourself staying at 145, or is it something that you? I mean, is that the weight class you feel comfortable at, or do you see yourself eventually moving up?
Now I see myself staying at 145 for the time being. Like I said, my last cut was the easiest.
Mm.
So I really don't see, if I can make weight the day before, I'm fine for now.
So how's the fan base? I mean, it seems like they're as far as like I mentioned the stuff Ron Kruk was saying on air about you. He said that you have a pretty deep following. Like how many fans come into the wearing the shirts and stuff in the arena that like the jujitsu shirt that you have on, or and flag waving and stuff like that. I mean, did you bring a lot in the last time?
Last time, no, because it was in Albuquerque.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a lot of the fans are Jewish and they can come to fights on Friday night, which is a problem.
Oh yeah.
But whoever can comes out and support. We always have like at least a dozen or two coming, bringing flags, cheering, and it really helps. It makes you feel at home. And even when I'm at the other guy town in California, and he's supposed to be the local guy, and everybody's cheering my name, it feels good, and I'm sure it messes them up a little bit.
Is there anything you do at weigh-ins to mess with your opponent, like as far as the ceremonial weigh-ins, or when you do the face-off or anything?
No, nothing really to mess with them. I just, look them in the eye, like I learned since I was a kid. If somebody wants to beat you up, you can look in their eye, like just for a second, and make them rethink.
Mm-hmm.
So just, make them rethink their choices and look into their souls, kind of. But
Yeah.
not really to like be a bully or anything. It's just, this is what I learned. Somebody, you're gonna fight him, that's how you look him in the eyes.
Well, you look like you have a lot of fun in there. I can tell. I mean, from what I saw when I was doing my homework on you, I mean, obviously it's a fight, so it's not that fun because you're trying to avoid not getting hurt. But I mean, your energy just seems positive when you fight.
Yeah, every time I fight, the thing I'm thinking the most is like just how lucky I am, because I could not be here. I could be, working in some office or something. Could be somewhere hating my life, but I'm out here. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I'm, training all day. I'm with my buddies. We're just punching each other, having fun. And then one day I go out there and get to compete. It's kind of like, it is stressful a little bit to fight, but at the same time, like, wow, how lucky am I to just be here and do that in front of all these people?
Have you avoided any injuries in your fight so far, or have you had anything that sidelined you at any point?
I broke my hand in my last amateur fight.
Hmm.
So that kept me out of fighting for like 9 months. And I've been active since. I wish I would have been more active, but sometimes the fight just won't work out. So I had a few times I had to wait like 5-6 months between fights, but I'm always ready. I'm always good to go.
Do you find that activity makes you? Someone did a, I forget who it was. It was an old site that I used to write for, but someone did a survey, and it seemed like that as far as like less downtime. So, and it doesn't sound like it makes sense when I say it, but it seems like from the data he gathered anyway, the less inactivity you have, like the more fights you get, the less you get injured. Is that something that seems like it's the case for you?
I wouldn't know because I
Mm.
only been through one way, you know. I
Yeah.
never had like a point when I could fight every month. First, it was because of visa issues, and then when you fight
Mm.
pro, you know, not everybody wants to fight you, and you can. There's not shows where they want to book you all the time. But I feel like I've been mostly injury free because of my style, and you know, I don't get hit much in the head, um, nor in the body really when I'm sparring and when I'm fighting. So it works out. When somebody gets me in a nasty submission, I just tap, no ego, no worries. I
That's
always
good.
rather not tap and fight to get out of it. But when I feel it puts me in danger, if it's a
Yeah.
neck crank or whatever, I'll just tap. Good job, man. Let's keep rolling, and then we can just train more.
It's refreshing to hear that,
Yeah.
considering that there's a lot of people that are the opposite, and you see so many training injuries that are affecting people's careers. But
You
you know,
you
I,
can you can never like stop injuries completely. You can
Mm.
never you know completely stay away from them, but you can definitely manage and do your best to not get injured and not act a fool. You know.
well, if you're 27 and you haven't suffered any kind of knees or neck injuries and stuff like that, you're definitely on the right path. I mean, there's obviously going to be the broken hands and stuff like that you really can't avoid in a fight situation. But as long as your knees and your ligaments and everything are holding up, and you're being willing to tap out is obviously huge in that. As we see fighters who are blowing their knees out and stuff left and right in training. Um,
Yeah, and you know, also one more thing is choosing your sparring partners. And you know, sometimes they're going to be a huge guy or somebody who's spazzy, and he
Yeah.
wants to. No, thank you, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, no, next time. No, thank you, bro.
You know, it's
So
funny. It's funny that you're mentioning that because I actually had a really long conversation with a very spazzy blue belt that I trained with, and I saw him. He put some guy. He's only been a month. He put him in a crazy heel hook, and I had to say, "Yo, the guy's only. He doesn't even know what that is yet. What are you doing?" And I had to take him to the side. Because I was running the class, so I took him to the side and I said, "Listen." I was like, you need to be a little more looser. I mean, sometimes flowing is good for you because the guy was too spazzy and too rough. So it's nice to see that obviously because the mentality has to change, and guys like you are good representatives for the sport when you say what things like you just said about you live to fight another day. If you know that if the move is in and the
yeah,
guy has
exactly.
it, then the way you get to train, you don't miss any training time, and you can sign up for the next fight rather than sit out 8 months recovering from an injury. That's very refreshing
Yeah.
to hear. So I think that's it. I mean,
yeah, we're getting close to wrapping up here. Do you
uh,
have any sponsors or anything you want to throw out or anything like that?
Sure. Would like to take Venom. Big thank you. Um, Pro Body Israel, Salsport, Tasty Clean, Buchanan, and I think that's it. If I forgot anybody, I'm sorry. And I love all my sponsors. Thank them. I thank all my fans and anybody who supports me. Thank you guys for having me.
What about your Twitter handles or your Instagram? What is that?
My Instagram is Natan_Levy, and my Twitter is Levy_Natan, NATAN LEVY.
Awesome. I look forward to it. I'm going to try to get credentialed up and come out and cover your fight on the 7th out
That
there
would be
in
awesome.
Cabazon. Just out of curiosity, what size shirt do you wear? We have podcast shirts, and I try to get them for my guests.
Medium.
Medium. Okay, I'll work on getting one of those. So that's pretty much it. As usual, fans can follow us at Combat Hour on Twitter. You can follow me at MMA Hawk on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow Ed at Carbazal on Twitter and at Carbeerzal on Instagram. We look forward to your fight on June 7th for LFA 69 on Access TV. Also, fans, there's a big UFC event this weekend that coincides with a big Bellator event. So plenty of action this weekend for the fans. Till next weekend, I look forward to talking to you about the fights, and good luck in everything, Natan, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys.
All right, thank you.